Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this conversation between Dayanita Singh, artist who uses photography, Sudarshan Shetty, sculptor, installation artist, and I'm the laptop. But I just want to start, Dayanita, with with your forthcoming book called The House of Love, on whose cover is Sudarshan's artwork called Love, which is a whole lot of tiny replicas of the Taj Mahal put together to make a room, a square room. Why is Sudarshan on the cover of your book, and what kind of a conversation are you beginning with his artwork in this book?
It's a conversation about love. It's an old conversation about love. The Taj Mahal is love, it's loss, it's death, what were all the other things?
The Taj Mahal is also being endlessly repeated in that work. Its iconicity, it's India as icon.
So House of Love, I couldn't imagine having any other cover, and there was no way I would have just a picture of the Taj Mahal. And it was perfect for me when I went to see Sudarshan's show at the Devi Foundation, and it was the time I was photographing with the headlights. So I thought I would never be able to afford his work, but if I, like a robber, photographed his work with these torch lights on my head, then it becomes my work. So I'm not sure if he's going to sue me for that or his gallery is going to make trouble for me, but we are prepared and we are hoping that there'll be this discussion about whose work it becomes finally.
No, in fact, for me, her photographs is like a continuation of the same process that the work is made, in terms of, choosing an icon, that is Taj Mahal, which is found on, like middle-class showcases in the homes that I've grown up in. And the multiplicity, the continuation of multiplicity in some way kind of, accentuate the idea of its iconicity even more. While it removes itself, the image of that Taj Mahal, tiny Taj Mahal that is found on the showcases, removes itself from the source and becomes an icon in itself. As a showpiece, so to say. And her photograph is a continuation in that replication, in that some sense.
Aha.
And in that same body of work, love, you also have a Braille typewriter typing the word love.
Oh, well, these are two different. The love show was
yes.
completely,
That was from a different body of work.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
House of Love is not the title of Sudarshan's Taj Mahal piece, but it's the title that he's going to be stuck with now because it'll be published as House of Love.
And House of Love is going to be a collection of stories in photographs?
Yes, I find more and more, well, I can't say I feel limited with photography, but it's no longer enough for me to photograph. I'm very concerned about where I can push the medium, where I can push the form, how it's presented. And I thought it would be quite interesting to make a book of short stories with photographs, with work stolen from artists, with story titles stolen from Calvino, Vikram Seth's poems. So it's an experiment, and we'll see what comes of it.
And would you say that your influences and inspirations also come from outside the strict boundaries of your practice, of your medium?
I think it's like a prerequisite for like most of our practices. All of us look for things outside our own studio practices. And a lot of my early influence did come from cinema, and my father was a Yakshagana performer. So a lot of the ideas do come from his art and his, even the idea of, even through the content that he was like performing.
Which was? What was the content about?
What was the Yakshagana?
No, these are basically epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana.
So you did grow up with a lot of mythological stories.
Right, yes.
And then literature came in later?
Much later, yeah.
But
Because
there
much
was
later when I started speaking, when I could start, I mean, when I could speak in English, which was like, you know, when I was in my 20s.
really, you didn't speak in English before then?
No, no.
But all the Vedantic uh, philosophy, who did you imbibe that from?
It's from my, you know, I grew up in a house full of storytelling and music, and, you know, there would be my father's friends, performers again.
So
Yeah,
storytelling as
so it
performance.
became a part of my life, and which I draw from I mean, much more now than ever, you know, because it's something that, you know, and when I went to the art school, I was like completely removed from it, and I almost kind of didn't want to have anything to do with it. And
With the storytelling of your
yes,
childhood?
yes, because
And what was responsible for that temporary shift away from that storytelling, stories, literature? Was it a certain kind of art education that you somehow entered into?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's what I was coming to. And when I went to the art school, you know, it was something else and completely, and we kind of tried to work very hard to get into it, you know, and the mode of, I mean, we were taught in, for example, you know, Bauhaus grid, you know, a Bauhaus curriculum, you know, under, so, you know, we were kind of completely gridded into, you know, completely a different set of systems that were completely alien to us, so to say. And, you know, we had to work really hard to kind of, you know, become
Unlearn.
insiders to that. And like when I started making, like when I was, you know, I think down second or third year, when I was making all these strange pictures, you know, suddenly, and my parents were worried.
So you were
for a time
painting
that,
then?
You know, yeah, so I was making these strange pictures, and, you know, I was good at drawing and painting before I went into the art school. So I think coming out of the art school, you know, I started looking at this, you know, ancient Indian traditions of, you know, making pictures or objects. And almost everything kind of started from the center, as opposed to what we had thought, which kind of, you know, had everything starting from the periphery. So it was like there was a huge philosophical difference.
Can you explain that a little more to me?
Especially the center and the periphery?
Yeah,
Are you
so
talking
if you
of
look
real
at
space?
even, you know, miniature paintings, you see everything starts from the center.
Yeah.
And if you understood, I mean, my reading of it was, you know, it's like the fundamental kind of, you know, difference in the way we looked at our own life.
And the way you were taught was different.
Absolutely, yeah.
The opposite.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started working with things that started from the center and kind of, you know, acquired layers around it in a very symmetrical fashion, rather than starting from the periphery and getting into the center.
How
even
interesting.
formally so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
what
the idea was, if you understood yourself well, you would understand the world well, you know. Possibly that was the difference. You know?
And how-
through the world you understand yourself, you know,
Yes.
as opposed to.
And would you say that you have also turned your education upside down
Absolutely.
or inside
I
out?
was fascinated to hear that because I went to a design institute set up based on the Bauhaus model, and I could only photograph, write, see everything in a 3-column or a 4-column grid. So it took me a very long time to break out of the Swiss grid that we were educated on. And I think up to now, it took me maybe 20 years. I think it was only with Go Away Closer that I was able to break that formal grid and find a looser way of working, informed much more by literature and classical music rather than photographers and design education. I think I learned design for 5 years, and then I spent 5 years unlearning that design education.
Is music important for you too in your work?
I don't know. I suppose so, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a, I don't know, how would you kind of, can you, I mean, are you talking about the idea of rhythm, or are you talking about...
I think in Dayanita's case, music becomes a very important presence when you are, say, sequencing your work, when you are putting a book together out of photographs. So it becomes almost a structural, at the same time, an emotional thread running through a body of work.
Sure, sure.
So would music figure like that, or would it be more...
Sure, I would imagine that, you know, even when I make a show, I'm I'm thinking of the space constantly and how the kind of, narrative would kind of unfold.
Yes.
So I work, I kind of use strategies of scale at times, and like there would be a large work, and or in terms of color and in terms of experience, like there is a kind of effort constantly at building up a narrative, maybe like in as in a piece of poetry or a song, or a musical piece.
Yes,
yeah.
I think it is, for me certainly, finally about looking to poetry and looking to music, not looking in a conscious way, but the moment I could say goodbye to photography and pay more attention to, say, Mahler's First Symphony when I was sequencing Go Away Closer.
You were constantly listening to it on a loop?
Right. But also just going back to all the years spent with Indian classical musicians, and I think the greatest thing I learned from them was withholding, knowing just when to stop. So even Kumar Gandharv, if he went on and on, it wouldn't quite be as magical, no? He always leaves you wanting just a little more.
Sure, yeah.
So in that
I
sense,
think in Kumar Gandharv's music, I think that the whole idea of not kind of concluding a syllable and letting it go every single time, so it kind of it has a kind of contradictory, edgy kind of creates edgy kind of atmosphere.
but that's you describing your work, Sudarshan.
Yeah, exactly.
So music is very closely part
Sure,
of it.
yeah, sure.
Yes.
In terms of its form and how people have kind of looked at it and
Of not completing the
right.
In order to...
Maybe they've won.
Yes. I think it is rather...
I think you should wait till
Yes,
it kind of subsides.
I think it is rather hilariously appropriate that this is going on around this conversation, because you often talk of the fairground when
I think
the
when
Mela...
we're talking about the idea of layers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you talk about the fairground? Is it because of the entertainment element, the popular element, the open-endedness of fairgrounds?
Yeah, while I was also looking at, formal structuring of the work,
Yes.
I was also thinking, of this distancing that we all kind of tried to kind of, internalize in the art schools. And I mean, I started looking back at my father's art and, and entertainment was very important, and the idea of art is very closely connected to the idea of entertainment in India. So I wanted to kind of draw someone, a passerby, so to say, whoever that is, I don't know who that is. Into with the promise of entertainment. And one of the things was like obvious strategies was to create a fairground kind of spectacle.
A spectacle.
The idea of spectacle within a museum or a gallery space that you're working in. And then maybe kind of, make it collapse under the weight of its own spectacle,
So that sense of a very precarious structure held together on the point of collapsing. You said that it was that sense which, in a way, informed your work, Dream Villa.
Yes, I think Sudarshan's influence, Sudarshan was the first artist I was not exposed to, but I think I understood from Sudarshan the mind of an artist. And I was obviously very, very attracted is maybe not the right suitable word, but very attracted to his work and the precariousness of it and how it was always on the verge of collapse, but it was whimsical, it wasn't somber, but I never thought I could have those qualities in my work. And then lo and behold, Dream Villa started to happen, and I thought, this is it. It took 18 years for it to emerge.
To come up in your work.
But I needed a form, a suitable form. I don't think I could have done it with the black and white. So I do feel the Dream Villa is a response to Sudarshan's Paper Moon, which was in early 90s.
Early 90s.
So I'm a slow learner.
One of the reasons why it is fascinating to bring the two of you together is that both of you, in your own ways, constantly push the boundaries of your medium, of your art. when installation art, in a sense, you have been the pioneer of it in India, in a certain sense. And with you too, the whole notion of the photo book as artist's book, but artist's book that is mass produced. So you're playing with dissemination of your work, which is as much part of the life of your work.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that only photography can offer, that kind of mass dissemination. And through Center Letter, and even more so with the Chairs book, I was able to find my own distribution systems. With Center Letter, I felt when you buy Center Letter for 60 euros, you get this box with these 7 books. You actually get my archive. So my archive travels into your house and you have the museum. So in a way, it sort of bypasses the gallery, it bypasses the museum, the institution. I go straight into your house. So the idea of dissemination, of course, was very important. But the pushing of the boundaries, I think, is something that I learned from Sudarshan in the very early years when I was still working as a photojournalist. I didn't know how I could do it then, but certainly to question, to never be satisfied, to never sort of say, okay, this is it. I mean, the day I feel I can say this is it will be the day to quit. What about you?
Pushing the boundaries? I don't know. I mean, it's not something that you would do consciously and something that you live by as an idea. I think you do your best, like, you know, all of us.
No, but wouldn't you say that you don't like to, you don't want to keep repeating yourself, no?
I mean, yeah, well, not.
So you don't want to keep repeating yourself, yet your work wants to use repetition in a very different way. Repetition as ritual, for instance. Repetition as rituals of mourning.
Or as an exercising in meaning making rather than kind of, destroying the meaning,
Yes.
So, well, I mean, one of the ways that I work is also to look for opportunities that would extend, you know, in some way my own limitations with what I can do in terms of making objects in this case. So I do work with a lot of people that are outside.
Does the fact that your work is, each body of work is assembled and then very often disassembled at the end of a show, how do you deal with this whole notion of art and enduring form?
I don't think it is enduring because, you know, even if you made like, you know, the most monumental of work, which lasts for 100 years, it changes. It changes in its context, it changes in its meaning in time, you know. So one of the things to deal with that, it's a very philosophical question that you deal with constantly within your own work. So the idea of, you know, the moment of collapse that you were talking about is actually a strategy to kind of, you know, bypass that philosophical question and maybe kind of address it in a very different manner.
Who are the major writers for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a student, I was like, I mean, like many of my fellow, you know, friends in the school, we were all reading Kafka a lot, and Dostoevsky, and we grew up on Dostoevsky, Kafka.
Kundera?
Kundera a little later, yes, during my Delhi
Laughter
days.
and Forgetting?
Of course,
Lightness?
Yes, It
Slowness,
did inform,
sorry.
Yeah, it didn't inform a lot of my, you know, bringing together diverse things. The idea of bringing together diverse things and making a kind of world out of it, which may not belong to one object or another that is in question within that world.
You say that Italo Calvino's Difficult Loves is one of the best writing on photography.
The most critical, absolutely.
Yes, the adventure of the photographer in Difficult Loves. And you also often fantasize yourself on book covers.
Yes, I'm very envious of my writer friends, especially when I'm at an airport or on a plane and someone is reading a book. And I just wonder if ever photography could be read in that way. If there might be a book that might sit on your bedside table that you might just flip through like you would a book of short stories and read. And so we'll see if I'm able to pull that off with House of Love. But writing has become absolutely critical for my work now, and the music. And I think if I had to talk about what it is that is crucial for a photographer, well, just, I guess, any artist, it would be reading. It would be literature.
It would be literature.
So instead of going to art school, I would say maybe you study literature and then do a course in whatever form of art where you want to learn the technicalities, because it's about the thought. And I felt that in this kind of school I went to, the thought was not explored at all. It was all about the form, which is not at all helpful to me now, so I had to unlearn it.
And do you think that your work also comes from the world of thought into then the fairground?
I think it's a parallel world, you know. I mean, a lot of the thoughts come out of objects that you may make. You know, I like sometimes make objects without knowing what I'm going to do with it. And sometimes, you know, like I mean, there are objects that are lying in my studio for like years, and suddenly you get an idea, and it's like a chain of events that, you know, occur, that it kind of, you know, starts getting layered in terms of meaning, or, you know, or in physical terms of making it actually. So
that happens in photography as well, or certainly in my work, where maybe 7 years later you make a photograph and you recognize that 7 years before you were in that frame of mind, and then you start editing for that emotion. In this case,
that is how Go Away Closer happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't realize that before, but yes, I think like you make objects and they could sit there for years before their meaning reveals itself to you.
Sure, yeah.
Something similar happens with photographs.
Yeah. And I also believe that, you know, there is no kind of a conclusion in terms of, you know, as soon as you made a so-called sculpture, put it in a gallery, that it wouldn't change the next day that you put it in. So,
and conversation is important for both of you, isn't it? Conversation within or between works of art, and also between individuals, talk, conversation, exchange. Would that be important for you?
Oh, totally. I mean, the reading, yes, but maybe conversation comes even before that or alongside that.
So books mediated by people.
Yes.
Given to you by people.
Given to me by people, but also the conversations with writers, with colleagues, traveling. Traveling is really important for me, going on journeys together, and therefore sent a letter as a response to those journeys. But I don't know if conversations play such an important role for you. You seem to me much more self-contained.
No, not really, no. That's what I try to look like.
Yes. Well, I
no,
think
it's very important, and conversation could be between people, between you know, others,
works of
arts, and other events, you know, mostly. And I believe that, you know, it's in the arena of events that, you know, you really have kind of give and take and a negotiation that a lot of my work at least gets informed by.
Well, I think this conversation will have to be wound up for the moment. This is certainly not the last
done it?
word. I think so, yes. Well, thank you, Sudarshan Shetty. Thank you, Dayanita.
Thank you,
all.
Aveek.
Thank you.
you.